Meet 17-year-old Carlos Hallowell. He just fed investigators a chilling narrative, claiming he strolled casually into his mother's bedroom, only to discover her slaughtered mid-slumber. An axe to the head, a brutal end to her perfect online illusion. Mom and I returned from a devastating funeral, grabbed lunch together, and shared a pie. The last time I saw her breathing was roughly around 2:30 or 3. We retreated to our separate rooms for naps. A totally normal routine, he insists, securely wearing a deceptive mask. Hours slip by unnoticed. The exact time, entirely blurry. But suddenly, frantic, aggressive, barking violently wakes me up. This is a completely abnormal behavioral shift for our dogs. They should be locked securely inside their pen. So, I head straight toward the front entrance to verify. Her door stays shut, standard practice. But sometimes she lets the hounds out mid-nap for a quick bathroom break to keep things perfectly clean inside. The front entrance is gaping wide open. I figured she just carelessly forgot to completely shut it. Outside, those twin green security gates you just passed were swung entirely open. So I scoured the entire property, desperately hunting down those missing dogs everywhere. Nothing. I went to rouse Mom for backup, and that is exactly when I found her brutalized. Detective zeroes in. So during these scheduled nap routines, you two just completely isolate and ice each other? Yeah, standard. We prioritize isolated downtime, he states, a fleeting micro-smirk betraying his sickening Duper's delight. Too much exposure sparks vicious bickering. Spacing out was our ultimate survival tactic, keeping the fragile peace entirely intact and helping us get along perfectly fine. Any explosive arguments or toxic friction occurring today, zero conflict, a flawless afternoon. Picture perfect, resembling a carefully staged final live stream before darkness. We shared pie, a rare treat. The detective pries deeper. When the claws emerge, what triggers the hostility? Petty garbage, skipping classes, actively avoiding jobs, or obsessing over my girlfriend too frequently. Just trivial, meaningless teenage drama, exactly like that. Never any explosive, violent physical clashes. Just typical, irritating back and forth, nagging to rapidly drain the energy. Detective narrows the tight timeline. Pinpoint the absolute last time you two violently locked horns. Ages ago. Cannot even put a date on it. Smooth sailing ever since I moved back inside the walls. You moved out? Yeah. Mom grew fiercely bitter about my complete academic failure and my utter lack of future ambition for a while. She handed down a brutal ultimatum. Either strictly straighten my act instantly, or forcefully get kicked to the curb until I fixed my miserable life. I eventually complied and brought my bags back home. In any brutal homicide, investigators dissect the inner circle first. You hunt the closest parasites, thoroughly searching for the ultimate betrayal. They desperately crave motive, and Carlos, armed with his calculated lies, just served them a platinum reason. You claim the shattered trust was fully repaired? Carlos nods. Absolutely. Completely healed. Our bond was insanely tight. Outsiders never grasped our hidden dynamic, but we survived pure psychological hell together behind the glowing social media facade. I would bleed for her. I am entirely baffled by this sudden slaughter. The gruesome scene makes absolutely zero logical sense to my confused brain. Those gaping external doors were blaring alarms. Yet, her bedroom door remained eerily shut. Then I turned the knob. The detective interrupts sharply. Specify which doors. The front entrance and those heavy security gates. Highly irregular, Carlos stammers. Okay, so what unimaginable horror awaited you inside that pitch-black, silent bedroom? Our own family axe buried deep inside her skull. And God, I could still hear her desperately struggling to breathe. The detective pivots, probing beyond their digital footprints. You mentioned a bizarre psychological dynamic entirely baffling your peers. Clarify that severe psychological disconnect for me immediately. Our affection severely weirded out my friends. We operated on a totally different, emotionally detached wavelength from normal human families interacting with one another. Radio silence for consecutive days. Then suddenly, "Hey, want to hit the theater?" And we would instantly go consume a movie together. Just purely spontaneous, being our authentic selves. No warm hugs, just our cold, unapologetic reality. The detective leans intensely closer. Define affection within your twisted, highly isolated world. A rare verbal declaration or a sterile fist bump. My friends boast constantly about their sickeningly sweet daily devotions to their mothers, treating life like an endless, perfect Instagram feed. Endless hugs and constant contact. That was not us. We were hyper-independent, deeply solitary creatures actively avoiding the social performance. She craved isolation. I demanded total privacy. We simply collided whenever convenient affection randomly struck us both in passing. When the rare urge to socialize hit, we linked up. It functioned flawlessly behind our tightly closed doors. 13 years of absolute harmony. Nothing fundamentally psychotic about that, right? He smirks. The detective masks his deep suspicion. Not at all. I wonder why they judged it strangely. They just deemed our dynamic toxically unloving. But what do they genuinely know about our dark, completely isolated reality? The deceptive mask slips. Investigators pivot to the brutal reality. Who buried an axe in her spine? Let us discuss your mother. Look, we both know this was absolutely no tragic accident, right? Exactly. Someone embedded a hatchet into her back. Who possesses that kind of pure evil? I cannot fathom a single soul. Her final live stream showcased pure perfection, just sweet people from the local congregation. That was her curated universe. Zero enemies. At least, none I ever noticed. She maintained a highly insulated reality. Your property sits utterly isolated out there. Yeah, we are completely off the grid. Absolute nowhere. We actively embraced that heavy solitude. We mounted warning signs after detecting midnight prowlers. She heavily fortified the entire perimeter with security gear out of sheer paranoia. Fascinating. So, beneath that flawless digital facade, absolutely no hidden conflicts with anyone? None that I caught wind of. She kept her darkest secrets buried deeply, even from me. What about secret romances? Volatile exes? Never saw any. If she lived a double life, I remained completely blind to it. When did a romantic partner last step foot inside that fortified house? Literally never. Not a single occurrence since I moved back under her roof. I cannot comprehend this slaughter. We lacked bitter rivals. Our community worshipped our immaculate family image. She possessed zero adversaries, and neither did I. The entire church blindly bought into our perfect narrative. Local saints, then. So walk me through the shattered trust. You discover her mutilated corpse. Then what? Complete paralysis initially. Then I rushed over, violently shook her shoulders. I detected agonizingly shallow breaths, instantly collapsed into pure hysterics, and began screaming out for my mother at the top of my lungs. So I remain entirely clueless. Nobody. Yet here is a massive behavioral cue. Your main perimeter gate was secured shut. Not entirely. It lacked a deadbolt, just flimsy metal hooks keeping the outside world away. Any phantom intruder could easily bypass them in mere seconds. The agonizing mystery remains my own silence. Our protective guard dogs typically erupt aggressively at the faintest shadow crossing our remote property line. Absolute dead silence. Or I simply slept through her execution. Yet the rear exit, front entrance, and back perimeter were all heavily secured and locked. Beneath his calculated lies, a devastating psychological breakdown slowly surfaces. Investigators ruthlessly analyze his digital footprints, highly skeptical that a nameless phantom breached a fortified sanctuary just to butcher a sleeping woman. The deceptive mask shatters entirely, as seasoned interrogators finally aim their crosshairs directly at the grieving son. Carlos, statistically speaking, how often does a ghost infiltrate a locked residence while the victim rests, solely to execute them in cold blood. I lack those metrics. But listen closely, do not dare imply this horrific betrayal rests on my hands. She rescued me from state care at 4. She served as my unwavering anchor through every single turbulent storm. My professional inference is simply that random suburban slaughter remains a myth. Understood. It stands as a profound statistical anomaly. The brutal reality? 99.9% of the time, the butcher is a blood relative, a spurned lover, or a trusted inner circle confidant. Notice your psychological red flags flashing. You grew incredibly hostile the millisecond you felt cornered here, because history endlessly repeats itself. Past authorities instantly vilified me during that catastrophic child services nightmare. They assumed the absolute worst, so my defenses naturally spike. Yet that encounter hardly marked your final dance with law enforcement. Oh, absolutely not. Not even remotely close. Patrol vehicles swarmed our isolated estate constantly over petty domestic warfare and toxic screaming matches with my mother. Precisely. You recently engaged in a volatile domestic clash that ultimately required armed police intervention. Volatile? Barely. We resolved that shattered trust privately. Tensions escalated marginally, and she completely lost her grip on objective reality. I snapped, certainly. We meticulously deconstructed the entire conflict after authorities physically escorted me off the premises, correct? Did this explosive psychological breakdown occur before your departure or after? Prior to it, my catastrophic academic failure sparked severe tension. Shoving matches immediately ensued, violently trading aggressive blows back and forth across the room. Nothing strictly physical, though. Just venomous verbal assaults viciously demanding each other to back away immediately. Pure, unadulterated hostility echoing endlessly. A deeply toxic, unbreakable loop of blind, directionless rage. Armed with devastating behavioral cues and spotting his subtle duper's delight, the investigator prepares a tactical bluff regarding a morning audio witness. So, what exactly triggered your violent screaming match this morning? No fights today. Perfect harmony, he claimed. Yet, neighbors reported violent screaming. Screaming about what? He deflected. That was the detective's pursuit of shattered trust. Which neighbors? His eyes darted nervously. We did not argue. Our morning was absolutely picture perfect. Everything was perfectly fine. But the timeline fractured. His deceptive mask finally began slipping. A peaceful morning. Then we attended a funeral. Everyone saw our flawless public facade, he insisted with cold detachment. Home was completely fine. The investigator leaned in closely. Then why the sudden violent shouting behind closed doors? Loud? Absolutely not. He doubled down on calculated lies. She woke me calmly. The afternoon, dead silent. No yelling, he answered, without a single blink. We went to sleep peacefully. Today was fine, nothing unusual. The detective countered. Someone invaded that house and brutally butchered your own mother. I know. I see the horrific reality, he replied emptily. You claim an intruder opening that front door would trigger those protective dogs instantly. They would go completely feral, barking relentlessly. Explain that profound, deadly silence to me. I could not outrun those guard dogs. I have no idea. You are the lead investigators. Solve this dark, twisted puzzle yourself. Are you not supposed to figure this out? The side doors and heavy gates were left completely unlatched. Dogs roaming freely everywhere. Front door left ajar. I have absolutely zero clue how this nightmare unfolded. I demand to know how. I do not want to know why. Someone deliberately let those dogs out. They scattered silently instead of attacking the brutal killer. It makes absolutely no logical sense. The very second those animals cross that gate line, they will completely bolt. It is their only taste of freedom from that suffocating, fenced confinement. Otherwise, they remain entirely trapped. I sense the dark betrayal in your intense interrogation. I am entirely innocent. I would never ever commit such a brutal, bloody atrocity against my own mother. Yes, we argued constantly. We continuously tested each other's psychological boundaries for petty revenge. Our dynamic was a pendulum of war and peace, constantly swinging. But brutal murder, I would not consider that in a million lifetimes. Adopted at age 4, she was my absolute world forever. Your grim insinuation of murder deeply, profoundly offends my very core. You are staging an impressive performance, a purely theatrical show, a masterpiece of manipulation, the detective pressed. A performance? He scoffed. A smirk of Duper's delight flashed. How is this fake? I remember your previous interrogations, the chilling digital footprints of your past lies. Do you? I ran major crimes back then. I studied your deceptive mask very closely. Understood? I recall that psychological profile highlighting your deeply disturbing, purely sociopathic behavioral tendencies. Coldly sociopathic. Exactly what I am witnessing now. You are poorly mimicking genuine human sorrow. Mimicking? Yes. How is this fake? She was my mother, the woman who raised me. Because your emotional responses are completely hollow, you do not process grief normally. I lack normal feelings? Exactly. That is the true hallmark of a predatory sociopath. You try faking it, labeling me a sociopath. Absolutely, the investigator confirmed. Really? He sneered defensively. Yes, this calculated deflection. Do what, exactly? I analyzed your micro-expressions. 100% guilty. Analyze away. Then, he challenged. You are devoid of true empathy. Judge me all you desire, the suspect retorted. My emotions are real. I adored her. Anyone locally will eagerly defend our picture-perfect bond. Do you truly believe intense love prevents people from committing the most unspeakable, violent atrocities? Never like this. It happens daily. As I mentioned earlier, the most violent betrayals almost always come from a trusted loved one. I am innocent. We were flawless. Our final live stream showed an absolutely unbreakable, perfect family. We possessed a sacred bond. Neither of us would ever cross that terrifying, violent physical threshold to hurt one another. Label me a monster if you must. Dig deeply into our pristine lives. You will find zero darkness. Interrogate everyone. They will universally confirm my absolute innocence in this horrific, bloody family tragedy. Carlos fiercely maintained the illusion, insisting their curated reality never masked a deadly physical rage. Then, investigators drop a bomb. A violent clash from years ago shatters the illusion. Carlos had assaulted his mother. Instead of an arrest, she kicked him out. Shattered trust was their brutal reality. Carlos deflects. Okay, fine. It happened. It actually happened. Yes. Detective. We have to dig into the ugly details, Carlos. There is no avoiding it. Carlos. I never denied it. Yes, it occurred. She skipped the cops and just kicked me out. End of story. Eventually, I returned. We went back to playing the perfect, happy family. My roommates, Stephanie and Damien, were furious. They hated that I went back to rebuild that toxic bond. We fixed it. Detective, you barely just moved back. You see why these red flags. Listen to me. Carlos, I get how suspicious it looks. I know it seems sudden, but you promised to question everyone. So ask them, please. Every single one will swear I could never commit that ultimate betrayal. Detective, we are checking every shadow. We are working every angle. And right now, you are the prime target. Carlos smiles weakly. That is fine. Honestly, fine. But I swear on my life, I would never harm her. Detective, listen here. I have worked these gruesome scenes for 25 years. My partner has nearly 20 years. Every suspect starts with calculated lies. The instinct is always to spin a fake narrative to survive. Carlos stammers. I did not touch her. She was far from a saint, but crossing that fatal line, never. That domestic charge, pure self-defense. She gouged my eye with her keys. I merely pushed her away to survive. But murder? I would never take it to that permanent, bloody extreme. Ever. Detective, was that violence a dark routine or a fluke? It happened often. It was incredibly aggravating. She was vicious at home. But at church? A deceptive mask. We played the flawless, holy family. We buried the trauma. I brushed it off. But her emotional and physical torment was absolutely relentless. Still, I would never end her life. Despite the horrific fights and the bruises, my love was genuine. Detective, I have heard that exact excuse 1,000 times in this very room. Love does not vanish just because someone snaps. A fatal, split-second rage does not magically erase all affection. Carlos, no. Look, I simply would not slaughter my own flesh and blood like a monster. The darkest thing I ever did was shatter her wrist, and the heavy guilt absolutely ate me alive. Detective, and you called that an accident too. This is a terrifying, violent cycle stretching back years, man. But butchering her? Never. I cannot even picture inflicting that level of sheer psychological agony. Despite the absolute hell we lived in, I could never do it. She was my only anchor left. I have nobody else. Narrator. For the next 2 exhausting hours, the psychological warfare drags on. The investigator weaponizes empathy, sharing his own childhood abuse to completely disarm the cornered suspect. It is a chess match for a confession. Yet, 120 minutes later, the suspect remains an unbreakable vault. Carlos walks free, slipping back into the shadows while the relentless hunt for truth intensifies. Days pass. The facade cracks. Investigators haul Carlos back into the unforgiving interrogation room. They uncovered something damning. Tangible proof of his lies. Detective, were there any surveillance cameras at the house? Carlos stammers. Inside the house? Not that I recall. My mother? No, nothing comes to mind. She mentioned one once, but I checked the house. You guys already tore the entire crime scene apart. I never spotted a single lens. The only camera I knew about was completely removed ages ago. We had a security warning sign and a few old cameras, but the harsh weather destroyed them. So, we replaced them with decoy lights in the trees, a fake security setup to scare off intruders. She was paranoid about privacy. Detective, what about hidden recording lenses inside the actual home? Carlos over-explains. I have no idea. Detective, you do not know? Carlos, no. Well, yes, that was her secret world. What this smug suspect does not realize is that dive teams plunged into a nearby murky lake. Buried in the mud were his mother's phone and 3 cameras, the digital footprints of her final live stream. Detective, and her cell phone? You never touched it? Carlos, no. I swear, I never saw her phone. That detail sticks out. Not sure if I logged it for her perfect feed, though. Her smartphone wasn't inside that pristine bedroom. It's her lifeline, always resting in plain sight, projecting that deceptive mask. All her digital footprints lived on that tiny table. But the axe? That brutal reality? Probably pulled from our shed. Where did we store it? Could be the garage, maybe the shed. Actually, I am highly confident it rested inside that shed. Our aquatic unit drags lakes, correct? Yes, I know that well. So we scoured every inch of water behind your flawless property. Understood. Care to guess what surfaced? No clue. Absolute silence. Nothing hiding down in that muck. Just rusted tackle and forgotten fishing gear buried in the dark mud, right? Sure. Is that truly what you expected us to uncover? Drop the calculated lies. Give me raw honesty, because I am your sole lifeline here. Right. I catch your subtle drift. A cardboard box arrives. Inside sit the waterlogged cameras and her smartphone, the very tools used to broadcast her final live stream. Dredged from cold depths. Recognize this ruined hardware? It destroys your narrative. Is this the lens that monitored your facade? That recorded the exterior, angled toward the… Wait, is that exact model? Absolutely not, Detective. Recall those tiny indoor lenses you mentioned. We pulled this specific one from your living space. Fine. Yes, it monitored the glass, capturing a fractured image of our home life. How many devices did my divers retrieve? Take a wild guess at your digital footprint. 1. False. Only one existed indoors. Incorrect. Your shattered trust hides another lens lurking in those shadows. Absolutely not. I swear there was one. Then humor me. What other evidence of your betrayal surfaced from those murky waters? Look, I am simply answering questions to cooperate with this exhausting interrogation process. Anything at all. Still drawing blanks. You genuinely cannot fathom what dark secrets we dragged up. Well, I suppose her mobile device, alongside those wretched security lenses. Exactly. Her personal phone dumped in deep water. 3 separate cameras submerged. Consider that reality. Notice how your innocent facade crumbles. Yes, I see the walls closing in. The single way out is dropping the deceptive mask. Tell me an argument erupted. Claim it was an unforeseen tragedy behind the aesthetic. Give me an angle. If a fight snapped your reality, admit it. Without undeniable truth, my hands remain completely tied. Otherwise, you look like a cold psychopath who committed utter butchery without a second thought. That is false. I care deeply. Internally, I am raging about this brutal nightmare. Your anger means nothing. Physical proof guides my investigation, and this digital evidence destroyed your narrative hours ago. I comprehend the optics. However, zero conflict occurred between us. We never engaged in combat. Total harmony. Our timeline was flawless, like her curated posts. I cannot recall a single dark shadow creeping over us. Everything felt completely picturesque. A chilling realization washes over Carlos. Sunken hardware means recovered videos. Fearing his shattered trust is on tape, he cautiously peels back his calculated lies. My memory violently cuts out. Between the hounds howling and discovering her bloodied corpse, nothing. Spotting her lifeless body triggered absolute blinding terror inside me. Severe panic consumed my brain. Seeing her destroyed, I impulsively ripped down the entryway lens to hide our grim reality. Snatched her mobile device immediately, then yanked that ceiling monitor straight off its mount, ripping down known lenses to hide the slaughter. Now, his narrative pivots sharply. A convenient psychological breakdown, claiming total amnesia right before the horrific discovery. Feigning ignorance, he drowned her digital life phones and lenses, trying to wash away his monstrous sins in dark waters. Why the sudden terror? Honestly, staring at her ruined kingdom. I questioned if a monstrous act truly unfolded. My consciousness drifts frequently. Beyond that blackout, confusion reigned. I simply regained awareness sitting silently within my bedroom walls. Coming to inside my private sanctuary, I casually brushed off reality, thinking everything remained normal. Heard hounds barking, whatever. Noticed the entryway cracked open slightly insignificant details, masking a brutal betrayal. None of those subtle psychological red flags screamed murder. She maintained unusual habits behind her deceptive mask anyway. Aside from those dark, calculated lies, I swear, 100%, my mind went entirely blank. Think about it. How would a normal person react upon discovering a gruesome scene like that? Total shock. They dial 911 immediately. Exactly. Does destroying the digital footprint seem like a natural first reaction to you at all? No. Why would anyone do that? I cannot explain my own actions. What twisted logic justifies tossing out a phone and home surveillance footage? To conceal the grim reality, obviously. But sheer terror took over. I lost control. The violent struggle with my mother, violently slamming her onto the floor, my brain conveniently erased that brutal betrayal from my memory, completely and utterly. A sudden snap. Pure chaos erupted in a blinding flash, and suddenly she was pulling herself up off the blood-stained floor, brushing it off like absolutely nothing had just occurred. Damn. So, you claim complete amnesia regarding the killer? Nothing. My timeline vanishes completely between hearing the dogs howling to investigating the disturbance and then finally waking up to a chilling, living nightmare. Exactly. Just the sheer terror of finding her lifeless. Are you positive no intense confrontation occurred? Absolutely not. I swear to you, zero conflict happened. I cannot recall a single trace of any dispute shattering our peaceful home. You realize how incredibly damning this looks, correct? I grasp the terrifying optics. We are merely attempting to uncover the dark truth here. Understood. That agonizing guilt has been suffocating me relentlessly. The fact that blind panic hijacked my brain and forced me to destroy those vital digital footprints haunts me. Are you aware that destroying critical evidence completely contradicts the behavior of an innocent, grieving son? I absolutely recognize that. It has haunted my conscience for months, but a deep psychological void remains in my fractured head. I recall absolutely nothing. Exactly. As I continually repeat like a broken record, the entire window of time surrounding her final live stream remains completely blank. That horrific event is completely gone. Every single detail. Look, here is the twisted reality of my mind. I desperately need the truth. I must discover if a dark psychological breakdown caused me to commit this absolute atrocity, which requires your seasoned investigative expertise. Give me answers. The memories simply vanished into thin air from standing inside the garage until then. An absolute void. Furthermore, I genuinely respect how Detective Ramos approached this incredibly tense, psychological interrogation. To be brutally honest, your partner disgusted me during our initial meeting. He aggressively labeled me a remorseless psychopath, claiming my cold soul lacked all human empathy before any actual investigation occurred. I utterly despised his baseless accusations, projecting monstrous behavioral traits onto me before thoroughly investigating the shattered trust. Right. I truly value your meticulous method of dissecting every clue. Legally speaking, claiming convenient amnesia serves as an incredibly cunning, calculated, deceptive mask. This manipulative tactic dodges a direct confession while remaining incredibly difficult to debunk, severely undercutting malicious intent, a crucial, defining element in devastating murder trials. Before a jury, flat-out rejections reek of deception the moment hard forensic evidence shatters them, whereas feigning psychological trauma and mental blackouts constructs a far more sympathetic, strangely believable facade. I clarified that occurred 2 nights beforehand. Yet, as previously stated, I am aggressively pushing you to break this mental block. If a sudden explosive rage drove you to eliminate her, confessing provides a tangible, grounded narrative we can actually build upon. But I require genuine, hard facts to build upon. Without total cooperation, this entire bloodbath simply resembles a cold-blooded execution, fueled by absolute malice. This investigation demands your full transparency. Well, my mind remains completely blank. And here is the brutal reality. I realized once the investigation started, the public would dissect our explosive arguments and deeply toxic familial flaws. Yet beneath that chaotic surface, I desperately wanted society to believe our mother-son connection remained an unbreakable, perfect facade. That curated social illusion was my ultimate shield, especially since an impenetrable darkness swallowed memories of the slaughter. Exactly. The chilling evidence leaves literally zero alternative suspects in this bloody room besides you. That inescapable, terrifying conclusion paralyzes me. I am desperately seeking answers. I am relentlessly searching my own fractured mind as well, tracing my steps back to walking through that door, greeted by her endless, crushing disappointment, a devastating psychological beating I endured constantly. Right, just endless verbal venom. Then she pushed further, branding me a complete failure. That exact moment triggered my final warning bells to back off. Instead, her relentless, toxic verbal assault simply escalated. Even while hiding behind calculated lies of amnesia, a jury convicted Carlos of premeditated murder, condemning him to rot behind bars for eternity without the slightest possibility of parole. How do you interpret these chilling behavioral cues? Drop your dark psychological theories in the discussion below.